first thing, thank you very much for the invitation. And secondly, we wish you well for 2017. Even though I did say at my birthday party that this was the first full day of Donald Trump's presidency, so this is a good opportunity to stomp on Trump. So we had to dance the night away. The other thing is, I just wanted to say that unfortunately I'm on call now. If this is my personal phone, but if that one goes, I might have to leave here a bit earlier. But I think I'm okay because I'm doing an anti-gang project in East London, where the gangs team in the local area call me in when one of their subjects on the. So they call me and I try and interview them and advocate for them and hopefully mentor them. So I've been doing that project since May, and it's been very interesting. We're hoping to replicate it in the near future, but it actually finishes in March, and depends on what funding we can get and if there's an appetite for it, because they can spend 70 million on a Trident missile, but they can't spend 70 million on gun crime and
that
gang crime
as well.
Yeah, 70 million
in America.
Yeah, 70 million. Anyway, so I'm on call for that. When Kwaku sort of said to me, "Can you come back?" Some of you were you? Any of you there? Okay. It's really because I suppose there's still this barrier between what people think police should do and what they're supposed to do, and it's really just to remind people what policing is all about. Because Sir Robert Peel, who was the Home Secretary when the Met Police was formed in 1829, he said something very, very profound, and it's still relevant to this very day. And I'm sure you've all heard it before. And it's called the police of the public and the public of the police. Okay. So that means you have to work in partnership. And you have to work at a level where you're not looking down on people or say, "Oh, we'll come back to you if we need you." It has to be continuously reinforced. And so that the public are your eyes and ears, because you can't do it on your own. But what it also does is to ensure that you are serving the community. It's not a power trip. It's not for you to go out there and, I don't know if you heard about the case in Bristol during the weekend. This man in his 60s wanted to go in his house. These officers said,
They talked to him so rudely.
but no, I don't. That's bad enough. But to taser him
In his face.
and a man of his age, he could have been killed.
That's
true. And we know of deaths with tasers. And surprise, most people who die are black and minority ethnic or have a mental health condition. So you think, and I was interviewed by LBC, and I said, well, listen, if those officers really knew their powers, I'm not just talking about what's written on the paper. It's right, their powers of persuasion, because we're not supposed to default to the nearest firearm, whether it's a taser or a CS spray or even a baton. They should be defaulting to how can we diffuse this situation, cool it down, not hot it up with the taser. So if they got that taser, they'll use it as a default, not try and investigate, try and really understand that they're, even if it's hands-on, if you have to say, "No, sir, I want to speak to you," whatever it is. If he then struggles, then obviously you have to try and control and contain him. But that, for me, was a really profound thing, because, again, policing, as I said, is a service, and we're not an occupying force. You're going to put your cameras up. Yeah. I'm not live on Facebook or anything, am I? Okay.
No, Snapchat.
Oh, yeah, well, I only do Facebook, just about. So we're in a situation where we really need to challenge police to ensure that they're a police service, they're not an occupying force, they know their powers, and when they do execute their powers, whether they want to use any form of non-lethal option, CS spray, but even a taser is supposed to be non-lethal, but it can still kill. It has to be proportionate, and it has to be necessary. You can see from that Bristol case, it was not proportionate, it was not necessary, and as a result of that, I said in Ferrari, those officers should be subject to discipline, and I hope the IPCC will recommend those officers face discipline, because that was unnecessary violence. and some of you might know that I was when I was joining the police service in 1982, my father was badly beaten up by police, and again it was totally unnecessary. He allegedly double parked his vehicle and it caused an obstruction, and just around the corner from where we live in Islington, and the officer said that he was causing obstruction, preventing vehicles going through. So he said, fine, put me in a book, no problem. And then he started to measure up the gap between his vehicle and the other vehicle, as you do, because he loved being, representing himself in court. He prided himself on how many cases he could get off, because he was a long distance driver. He was always going to get reported for one thing or another. And unfortunately, there was the institutional racism and the racial profiling, etc. So as a result of that, they saw what he was doing and then beat him senseless. And I was working at the Royal Free Hospital, because after I finished uni, I was a research scientist. Not as eminent to this young man, but he's mega. But yeah, maybe I could have been mega if I hadn't responded to the calling of policing. But yeah,
you're mega, trust me.
Yeah, well, in other ways. But one of the things that, again, I looked at it and I thought, how can this be proportionate? How can this be necessary? So when I heard of that taser incident, because my dad he was actually 61 when that happened.
Did anything happen to the officers who beat him up?
Well, they forcibly arrested him, and my dad had to sue them for false arrest, excessive force, successfully. And that was the first, and in those days it took 7 years and or more. But I still joined the police despite that. Because when you respond to the calling of policing, sometimes you have to respond in a way because of what's happened, even though it could be your worst nightmare. But it's a step of faith that you hopefully will be rewarding in some way, and knowing that I'm a black man who happens to be a cop, not a cop who happens to be black. So it gives you clear perspective why you're going in there to make changes for the better. Because here I am, I'm retired, I'm still a black man.
Sure.
Might be, still a black man. Nothing's changing that. So that weekend incident really showed to me that if we don't hold officers to account, it could be worse. Because if they can be so quick to use a taser, what if they have a firearm? And then we see that in America.
Yeah.
And I've written a blog on this. I've done various media. I'm always on Twitter trying to impact on the Federation, because they're always asking for the general distribution of firearms to foot patrol officers. And I have said, no, you're not an occupying force. Look at what happens in America. And they're not going to shoot well-to-do people. It's not just a colour thing, it's a class thing. And invariably people from a certain background tend to be the ones they shoot first. So that's, for me, what still drives me. And in all honesty, I'm not sure when I will lose this desire to deal with these things, because we still hear about these cases. And that case in Bristol, for me, just shows that, we've still got a lot of work to do. So, the struggle continues.
You did some notes. Have you gone through that?
That's it.
That's it. Oh, okay,
yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so I thought it was 83, but you said 82. I thought you joined in 83.
No, my dad was beaten up in 82.
But you did join, so
But I
I'm
joined
right.
in June 83.
Right, okay. Now, and indeed at your party, there are a lot of friends that you've been to school with. Most Africans have a negative experience in engaging the police. So how did you weather those few years joining the force? Because you were here, we don't say black, we say African. You're an African in the service. On a personal level, how were you able to deal with that? Because your friends themselves will have issues with the police.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first said to my friends, school friends, etc., that I was thinking about it, they said, "You do that, mate. Forget it.
Right.
I won't know anything about you. You know, if you ever want to reduce your Christmas card list, by 8%, this is the way to do it." I'm sure if I was on Facebook then, you know, it would have just bottomed out. But for me, it was a calling, because what happened to my father, I remember as I said, I was working at the Royal Free, and my professor, a woman called Dame Sheila Sherlock. She was a liver specialist. And, I worked in a unit with a couple of professors. One was Roy Pounder. And I remember Roy, I said to I'm thinking of joining the police. No, I didn't say that. No, I was thinking about it. I never said anything to him. So I was coming up to my appraisal. That's right. And I was doing my appraisal. And so I've been there 3 years, 1979 to 82, about. And I remember he said to me, "Leroy, somehow I can't see you working in a lab for the next 30 years. I said, "Why?" I said, am I not working well? Am I? Nothing about the quality of work. Yeah, you've achieved all your objectives. But I don't see you working in a lab. So I said, "What do you think I should do?" And he said, "I think it should be a cop." And then I told him about what happened to my dad. And he said to me, "Well, maybe that's the reason why you should go. Even if it's to stop one of those." And I thought it was insane. And then, I went back to home, and Gretel, my wife, was there. Well, she was my fiancée at the time, actually. And she said, I told her what Roy Pounder said. And she said, "Well, maybe he's right." I said, I'm not going to marry you after all, because you're telling me to join
the police.
Yeah, because I was trying to talk myself out of it. But every person I went to who was
agreed with it.
Yeah, who are close to me, actually said. But I said, "Well, what about my friends and all that? Why would I want to do this? Is my worst nightmare." But the third person to really encourage her, it was a woman I highlighted at my speech on Saturday. Jessie Stevens. Some of you may have heard of her. She'd been a community activist for over 50 years, mainly in North London. She used to be an independent advisor, a custody office visitor, but mainly she does now community events. She defies logic. She's actually 90 this year. Would you say she looked 90 to you? Amazing. And I remember, so you can imagine my father was not happy, me joining the police service. And so I said to Jessie, "Jessie, I'm going to tell my dad." He said, "Leave him to me." And, various sequences led to my dad hitting the roof, and she told him straight, "We need people. Go in there. And I remember she said something of, "You can't steer a ship from the shore. You've got to be on board, in the captain's cabin, shaping and steering the direction of the ship." And even I was saying, "Gosh, how am I going to do that?" I don't know. The Black Police Association didn't exist at the time. There was so much, they're like sus law. I had so many friends and cousins who were victims of the sus law, or some of them even left the country, because if you can be suspected of thinking of committing an offence, this is the thought police now, isn't it?
Minority Report.
Yeah. Yeah.
Film.
Yeah.
We used to call them the thought police because they can think for you to say, oh, because you were standing there maybe with a couple of other people, you were about to do a robbery or you were about to do, even though there was no intelligence to suggest that. And the archaic law of the Vagrancy Act of 1824, which was used, was total and absolute misplacement of legislation, just like joint enterprise. Joint enterprise is not a law, it's a doctrine. And it was a doctrine that was adopted for people who used to duel with a sword fights or pistols, and to prevent those being supported by different factions. So joint enterprise was not only the person who survived the duel getting arrested for murder, but anyone who supported either faction being brought in a joint enterprise. But here we have joint enterprise, and it's only mainly young black or working class men who are subject to joint enterprise. So you know that's the real issues that I'm thinking. How are you going to change the construct? But Jesse said to me, you know, that you need to be in there, and you will get the support. And the amazing thing is, I was driving past when I got diverted by the sat nav. I actually went past Hendon. It doesn't exist anymore. I don't know if you know. It's just block of flats. You know, and you know, I was actually suffering a deja vu moment of when I first drove there in 1983, and my father by this time had come to terms with it. I was serious, and he dropped me there on that first evening. And I'm actually reflecting on a lot of these things, and you know, I remember him saying to me, "Are you sure about this? Why would you leave a world of science in my comfort zone?" Because I still love science. In a lot of ways, it's helped me to be a better cop, because you know, you can't make assumptions. You've got to go by the equation. You know, x plus y equals z. You know, if it's not, why not? But don't assume. And that sort of, hopefully, the linear thinking helped me. And it helped me to survive the first 10 years. By this time I was married, so losing friends wasn't so much an issue. But the important things were the key people in my life saying to me, this is what you need to do. And sometimes you can run, but you can't hide.
You cannot look at African-British history and not see the intersection and the impact of South law on the African community, particularly with our young African boys. So, being in the police force, so I thought it actually been repealed before it came, but I think it came into effect 84. Okay, right. So, how did you see the misapplication on the other side, being a police person?
Well, as I said to you, my reasons for joining was very clear to me, and as a result of that, you know, once you make that clear understanding, I'm a black man who happens to be a cop, so I've set some red lines here. So if I see people who are doing wrong, and it doesn't matter what class or colour, but if they're doing wrong, I'm not going to condone it. I'm going to be true to my culture. And making sure that I stand up for those who are being mistreated and dealt with inappropriately. So you can imagine I'm public enemy number one. And it actually happened the first week I was in the Met, a training school at Hendon. And I remember I went round the room, a very similar sort of size room. And they went through each person. Why did you join the Met? Why did you join? And it's all great. I want to do great things. I want to help the public. And I was thinking, yeah. And I want to make friends, be a team, and all that thing. So they came to me. It so happens I was the last person. And they said, why have you joined? I said, well, listen, I know that the police service is in name only. It's not in deed. I have too many friends who got conviction, have had to leave the country, incarcerated because of the sus law. So, and that's how I know we're still in action. And I'm not here just to as a job. It's a vocation. I've left the a career in science where I didn't need to. It wasn't I'd lost my job or I was looking for a job. I actually had left the career to be an officer. And last thing, I don't need any friends because I've got, even if it's a handful, I've got a handful of friends. And I would prefer having friends outside the police service because it keeps you grounded. And that's one of the issues with police officers. They invariably socialize and they actually sort of accelerate each other's thinking around certain assumptions they make. And that's why they can act so disproportionately to just people thinking, why would you do that? But if you're in that culture and you don't have the checks and balances and it's reinforcing the norms and values. So that's why I needed people outside the organisation. And you'll see from my retirement too, how many police officers were there? Other than one uniform officer, the Deputy Commissioner, who gave the speech. Hardly. It's all community people. Because I realised the importance of my closeness with the community. That's what kept me grounded. That's what keeps it real for me. And I remember one of my appraisals, I was a chief inspector at the time. I was based in Paddington. And they said I was too close to the community.
Oh, no, that's funny. Oh, really?
Too close? How can it be too close to the community? I thought that was an attribute, personally. And I was actually going for superintendent when they said that. And they were trying to say, well, you're not quite ready for it because you're just too close to the community. I said, well, I know the importance of being close to the community. And I'd have to mention them about those Pelian principles I spoke about. 1829, the police are the public and the public are the police. So you're actually going against the ethos of why the Met was actually developed. So, that for me has been...
Yeah, but you haven't answered the question I said. Being a police officer, did you see the misapplication of the source law by your colleagues?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, because I'd already set some red grain, I was already called troublemaker from day one, from Hendon. And then rumour control. I'll tell you something, rumour control in organisation like the police, the military, whatever it may be, is faster than any social network. Before, it's quick. I exaggerate, it might not be as fast as Instagram or whatever. But, so your name precedes you. So I remember going to, when I left the Hendon to go to my first police station in Islington, I had the worst reporting sergeant ever. He'd had 14 probationers before me, and they'd either changed teams, and some had actually gone to change stations, some had left the Met. But I thought, if I can survive him, I can survive the next 28 years.
Where were you in? Which Islington one were you in?
Upper Street.
Upper Street, okay. Yeah.
Recruit school. All of a sudden you see people, they talk like they've been in the job for 20 years, not 20 days. And they got the swagger and, they're like little clones. And I remember, because I was made deputy class captain, because the class captain was a Sandhurst military instructor, so he's going to be very good. I mean, he taught me how to iron properly, bull my shoes, everything. He was just amazing. Yeah, Tom Kelly, never forget him. And so he supported me, and it so happens I had a couple of other black officers who joined at the same time, because there was a bit of a sort of recruitment rush to do that. But so that helped me to get through it. But it was amazing how they felt empowered to be obnoxious.
Yeah.
And it was like a lot of their prejudices, they could be legitimized in the organisation. And you think to yourself, where does this come from? It's obviously been latent in their thinking. Yeah. But once they go into an environment where it's good to talk about these things and talk about the community like this, as a them and us, and I said, no, this can't be right. So I would say to them, even though I'm not supervisor, I said, listen, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. But I was also quite good at giving back as I got it. Without raising my voice, Sometimes I'd have to just put them in a place. I suppose that's one of the attributes of being Jamaican. You always have a little line for them. So as a result of that, I was able to make it clear to them that they are an organisation that's not trusted, and until they treat people with respect and dignity, you will never get that trust.
Okay. Fast forward a bit. At some time, the Met introduced or had a supposed culture of multiculturalism. There was, in fact, race training. So what difference did such programs make?
Nothing at all. In a word, nothing. I mean, all that started from, there was two attempts at it. The first attempt was Commissioner Newman. Newman wrote this book we called it the Blue Book. It was called the Plus Program or something like that. And he tried to bring in this CRR training. And literally, it was half a day. And it was like preset ideas that you had to go through certain questions as a group and then come back. And you have to come back with this conclusion. And the facilitator would literally say, yes, we're all trained. But as soon as you leave the classroom, back to normal, because again, very good at playing it out, saying the right things, but you see officers who actually did understand the reasoning behind it, but they would conform to the norms of the culture, and there's no way they would have the strength of character to speak out. And then obviously, it's bad enough in the culture, but if you're on the street and there's someone you see is not being dealt with properly, why would you want to stand against your colleagues? Because it's got health and safety risks with it, because if you're getting a kicking or, some form of threat and you've upset your teammates and you ask for assistance, all of a sudden your radio doesn't work, they can't hear you, or I'm caught in traffic or whatever it may be. So you all these things is not just about, I'm not popular anymore. This could have life and death implications. So that's why you have to be so careful. Now, the second time this whole CRR training came up was through the Lawrence inquiry. So, obviously, 70 recommendations from 99 were being rolled out, which included the Race Relations Amendment Act and various other things. And they brought in a company, I can't remember what it's called, but they did this national CRR training, and it was 2 days. And it was literally an expansion of this blue book, I think. And again, all it did was officers just felt, well, we'll keep our heads down because obviously we're on the spotlight. I don't know if some of you remember they were saying, there's going to be less stops and searches, and so crime's going to go up, which never did. But it was like they wanted this self-fulfilling prophecy, all these sort of things. They were just going through the motions, and where, it became clear to me that, you can, to some extent, legislate behaviour, but attitudes remain the same. That was Martin Luther King who said that. It was so clear to me that was the case. But so by this time, 99, the Black Police Association was in existence. We gave evidence at the Lawrence inquiry. Myself and 2 other colleagues said that the police service was institutionally racist. And of course, again, I was public enemy number 1 anyway, not just someone they just didn't like. They now detest it because we were calling them out, saying as it is. But recognising when you point the finger, you have 2 fingers pointing back at you, saying, what are you going to do? So that's how we made sure that we came up with our own community engagement programme. Even our educational programmes, the Young Leaders for Safer Cities, been running since 2001, and it's still going 15, 16 years later. So, we have to walk the talk. So, CRR training sounds good on paper. It looks really good. Does it have impact on outcomes?
No.
What does CRR mean?
community and race relations training.
Okay.
And you know, and in all honesty, it's quite clear that if you don't have the supervision and leadership on the ground, holding officers to account, whether it's how they're carrying out the stops and their powers, whether it's under Section 1 Police and Criminal Evidence Act, PACE as we call it, the Stop and Search, Counter-Terrorism, Misuse of Drugs Act, whatever it may be, officers have to be held to account. So as I was starting to go up through the ranks, again, whenever, because I used to be a trainer as well, and anytime I would see officers going off track, you know, I would develop the evidence to hold them to account. You know, I'd develop them, but if you don't want to be developed, then best you find something else to do, because I'm going to hold you to account. But so, for me to join the Met, I wasn't thinking of being popular. I knew I was unpopular, outside, inside, but I had to be clear with what I was there for. And so, I suppose the BPA became the honest broker inside the organisation that gave that lens to say, well, this is what the organisation's all about.
Okay, fantastic. Police community consultative groups right now, I think they've been abolished. Do you think that's a good idea? Do you think we need some sort of structure so we can have the dialogue between community and the police?
Well, as I said, there needs to be checks and balances. There has to be external oversight. And anytime you don't get that, then because of the culture of the organisation and how it reinforces certain assumptions, and because I've been meeting so many times, and I think, you know, I'm with these senior officers, you know, some of them national, you know, and they would make all these assumptions. I thought, well, actually, have you ever really thought of the outcomes? Because you're talking about an example. A police superintendent can authorise roadblocks if they fear there's going to be violence, and they can designate an area. Now, it should be intelligence based. So when the 9/11 came, and the response was real enforcement, and nothing's really changed from that. It's still very enforcement based, all in the name of counter-terrorism. They would designate an entire borough. Now, how can you tell me you have the intelligence, the information to say that your entire borough is at some form of risk or actually have suspects in that area that can commit these crimes? So I was very pleased to be the lowest. That's the first time I was proud to be at the bottom of the pile when it came to the number of Section 60 authorities or counter-terrorism authorities, or regulation, or what's it? Regulatory Investigative Preparatory Act, RIPA authorities. That's more intrusive policing, surveillance, etc. I'll be at the bottom of that because I wouldn't just rubber stamp things. I would say, well, why are we doing this? Is it proportionate? Is it legal? Is it accountable? Is it necessary? To ensure that those officers knew what I was going to ask them and to get the right information. So, because there's certain superintendents, they go to, oh, yeah, all right, get on with it. No, I would ask. So, you know, those are sort of, as I said, the leadership and supervision has to be there. And, you know, even when I was a superintendent, I would do health checks to find out what team are the rogue teams that have more complaints, the ones who have the more violent arrests, the ones who have the least number of letters of appreciation, the ones who, you know, carrying out the stops and searches with the least number of outcomes, whether it's a caution or a charge or whatever. Like, you know, that's why I was doing silly hours, because you have to do that besides all the other things you're doing, so that you can say to the inspector, by the way, I've checked with your performance, and, you know, why is it your team is performing so badly on all these different fronts, and a similar team is not? So I wasn't just accusing him or her, they're not supervising the team. I'm saying this, you're policing the same patch. Why is there such a difference? You know, do I need to buddy you guys up or girls up to do this. You know, so you have to be. You know, I think for those of us who are parents, you really need to use some child psychology. You know, it's not just about, oh, you're wrong, you're right, whatever. So listen, let's do some comparisons here. You know, and that for me is really how you get the light bulb moment. I think, oh, right, okay. Because the other thing is, and I'll finish with that bit in this question, every critical encounter that officers get wrong, they set back community relations. And I say to them, because a key element is if you upset a person and how you manhandle them or whatever it may be, and then the following week say you're going to go back to the same person, say, oh, by the way, there was a burglar in here.
Can you help?
Yeah. You're not going to be that keen to do it unless you can rise above it and say, well, actually, I still have to think about making my community safer and be an active citizen. And in fact, that's the sort of things we invoke in our leadership program, to know their rights and responsibility, to reduce peer-to-peer pressure, but more importantly, to change their environment, not become a product of it.
Okay. I know we've dwelt on the police, and that's not your only persona. In fact, before I got to know you, you are a Christian, and a professing Christian. Also, you've been involved in community activities. Lately, you've got your own organization called Reality. But I remember it must have been the 90s, coming down to, I think, somewhere in Hackney. Did you bring, what was the Nikki Cruz?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you did all these programs. So if you can talk about your community engagement, also how your Christian life also impacts on what you do.
Well, I've always been God-fearing, but I didn't really understand the relationship of, because I knew it was a calling bringing me in, but I didn't know what was it all about fully until I really became born again in 1994. So I'm still a bit of a baby Christian, really. Only 24 years. But the 23. But one of the things, it was clear to me that my principles of joining the police service was very Bible. The understanding, the Beatitudes very clearly, and also to be very, I remember, I can't remember the verse name, but it's in various places in the Bible, but it says, in honouring God, he'll honour you. Mm-hmm. In building his house, he'll build your house. And it resonated on different fronts. So if I was going into a meeting, and if I believe I'm going into a meeting where, I'm not totally equipped to step into that meeting, I'd pray. Because, everyone has their own faith or no faith, but it has to be practical for me. So, and there was never a time where I'm going into a meeting, someone with chief constables, with the Home Secretary, whoever it may be. And if I prayed, I just need clarity on this, or I need that word in season, or whatever it may be, always came. Not once. Now you might think it's just a coincidence, maybe it's wrong, but maybe it's my thought process is being a lot clearer through prayer. Well, if that's reason for prayer, then even if it doesn't, if you don't think it has a spiritual context, so fair enough. But I found my faith helped me clearly to realize it's all kingdom work. So I'm not doing it for me, self-promotion. I'm doing it to advance the kingdom of light, to make our lives better. So it's the greater good. And a lot of people say, well, how can you be a scientist and believe in God? Well, C.S. Lewis, who was very anti-Christian, and he became a Christian, and various scientists have done so. So, but for me, it gave me a real framework from which to to really stand strong on faith. There's been an uplift of firearms officers across the Met from by about 600 officers. Now, they want it done within 18 months. Now, that questions you on the selection of people, because remember, there's supposed to be certain psychometric testing to make sure they're not imbalanced. Because it's bad enough giving them a sidearm or a CS spray or a taser, much less a gun. So that for me is a big issue, the selection process, and then the quality of the training, because and the diversity of those officers, because you cannot allow the wrong sort of people walking around with these guns, right? Because that taser incident during the weekend there has to be a wake-up call, right? So I think there needs to be a call to action about this. We cannot allow the general, and I'm quite willing to head up any campaign or work with anyone to do this, because I really believe the Police Federation practically every 6 months they said, oh, we surveyed our officers and they said they would really prefer us to be more armed because of terrorism. Listen, we were policing the IRA in the 70s and 80s, and all we had was side sticks. Right? We could call on armed officers, and I think it's important that even with that uplift of officers, you don't have them generally patrolling, but you have them in certain vehicles and certain deployments in certain boroughs, because most boroughs will have authorised firearms officers. They might be walking with their little CS spray and their tasers, but they can run in the police station, or someone can drop the firearms to them pretty quick. We haven't got that big areas yet, and I don't think it's going to be that way, even with the cluster boroughs you speak about. But we need to ensure we get the balance right, the checks and balances, holding the organisation to account. So you need people to be involved at a local level on each of the boroughs, make sure the borough commander knows this is an issue, right? So when you're using these officers as well, when you're given your authority under Section 60 authorities, what is the criteria? And all these Freedom of Information Act questions, we really need to do it. Because to be quite honest, if they can taser a 63-year-old man outside his house, and we hear it in the States. And remember, Obama had to have this picnic with his police officer who brutalized that very eminent, I can't remember the name of this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Really have some real concerns about this issue around arming police officers, right? It's a step too far as I'm concerned. And that's something I hear all the time on the street, because the young people say, well, listen, police officers are gang, they got guns, we're going to carry guns.
This is my worry. But you're right, it just seems at the moment, I mean, we're going to listen to what you say, but you're right, but it just seems that the other side, the community, are not aware. And by the time this starts to build up amongst the police officers, it's almost too late.
Look at the
you
DNA.
don't hear it in the voice or whatever, so it's kind of this...
But
well,
it's a part of the political agenda. They've already decided what they're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. But
it will happen, and they will start doing it.
I'll tell you something. Look at Boris's water cannons, right?
Yes.
Do you know it was community action that stopped him from getting, right? And the Home Secretary picking that up and saying no, right?
Yeah.
Right? So it can be done. Yeah. It can be done. If you listen, if you sniff it, you speak up about it. It'd be better to collaborate and coordinate and be cohesive around this.